Yeah, and they put it in a certain position knowing that it's going to hurt and affect my back. Now I can't move. It keeps me from sleeping at night.
Changed the way music videos were made forever. And Michael was really the most influential video artist of all time.
It just means family, and family to me is a feeling. It's love and great feeling.
Michael Jackson died $500 million in debt. That is the number almost nobody talks about when they discuss his legacy. Not his music, not his records, not the cultural magnitude of what he built over 4 decades. The man who owned the Beatles catalogue, who controlled one of the most valuable music publishing libraries in history, who had sold over 1 billion records across his lifetime, that man died owing more money than most governments can borrow. His estate was technically insolvent on the day he was buried. 15 years later, that same estate is worth approximately $2 billion. A $2.5 billion swing. And Paris Jackson, his daughter, went to court to find out where the money went.
Another one that I got that was very discreet was I got my father's birthday and Roman numerals on my wrist.
What she found is one of the most extraordinary financial stories in entertainment history. Not because it is unique, but because it reveals exactly how the legal system handles inherited wealth and who it is actually designed to protect. We are not here to take sides in a family dispute. We are here to follow the money. Because the numbers tell a story that the headlines have not fully explained. Michael Jackson's will was 5 pages long. 5 pages for an estate of this complexity. For context, a standard entertainment attorney drafting a will for a client with Jackson's asset profile, music publishing rights, master recordings, image licensing, real estate, ongoing royalty streams, would typically produce 50 to 150 pages of trust documentation. The 5-page will was not a failure of legal counsel. It was a document that reflected Jackson's trust in 2 men he had worked with for decades: his longtime entertainment attorney, John Branca, and music executive, John McClain. He named them as co-executors of his estate in that document.
My final show performances in London. This will be it. This is it. And when I say this is it, it really means this is it.
They would control everything. The structure Jackson chose was the Michael Jackson Family Trust. All assets flowed into the trust. The beneficiaries were his 3 children: Michael Jr., who goes by Prince, Paris, and Biggie, who was known for years as Blanket, and his mother, Catherine. The executor's job was to manage the estate, resolve the debts, and eventually distribute assets to the beneficiaries when the time was appropriate. The time has never been appropriate. 17 years later, the estate is still in active management, still generating income, still paying its executors. And the legal dispute that erupted between Paris Jackson and the estate's leadership is not, at its core, a family argument. It is a financial audit. She wants to see the accounts. The executors have resisted, and the numbers that have emerged from court filings tell a story that begins to explain why. According to Paris Jackson's own legal filings, the executors of her father's estate paid themselves more than $148 million through the end of 2021. $148 million to manage an estate on behalf of beneficiaries who include 3 children. In the same period, Paris herself received approximately $65 million in distributions from that same estate.
I read so much because that was like our form of currency growing up. Like my brothers and I, like my dad wanted us to.
The executor compensation exceeded what MJ's own daughter received by more than double. To be precise about the framing, executor fees in California are governed by probate law. And for large, complex estates, the permitted fees are substantial. The question is not simply whether these fees were legal, it is whether they were appropriate. Whether a fiduciary duty, the legal obligation to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries, not yourself, was honoured when the executors calculated and authorised their own compensation. That is what Paris is asking the court to examine. And it is a question that the numbers make very difficult to dismiss. The compensation figure is not the only financial issue in the filings. Paris also alleges that the estate left approximately $464 million in owned assets uninvested, not spent, not deployed, held idle. At a conservative 4% annual return, the kind of return a standard institutional investment would generate in a straightforward bond portfolio, $464 million uninvested for 5 years represents $90 million in lost growth. For 10 years, it approaches $200 million. This is not a rounding error. This is a financial decision with a measurable cost to the beneficiaries. and the executors made it. The estate also spent an estimated $15 million on legal fees related to removing content from digital platforms, content connected to child abuse allegations that the executors determined should not be associated with Jackson's name. Whether that decision was correct is a separate debate. What it represents financially is a significant discretionary use of estate funds that the beneficiaries did not authorize and did not directly benefit from. Now compound all of this with the biopic. The Michael Jackson biopic, titled simply Michael, is scheduled to open in cinemas on April 24, 2026. It stars Jafar Jackson, Michael's own nephew, in the title role. It is budgeted at approximately $150 million, and it is financed by the estate. That means the money being spent to produce this film comes from the trust capital that is ultimately supposed to be distributed to Michael Jackson's children. John Branca is a producer of the film. The man managing the estate is also producing the movie the estate is paying for. Miles Teller, one of Hollywood's most expensive working actors, was cast to play John Branca as a character in the film.
Well, I think that Michael was a perfectionist, John Landis was a perfectionist, and this video was revolutionary.
Paris Jackson has called it a botched production. Her lawyers have questioned whether casting a high-billing actor to portray the executor in a flattering biographical role serves the financial interests of the estate's beneficiaries, or the personal interests of the executor himself. The executors argue that their involvement in productions about Michael Jackson has generated enormous financial returns for the estate, and that the biopic will do the same. They may be right.
You're confident.
Bohemian Rhapsody generated over $900 million worldwide. Elvis generated $287 million. A successful biopic about the most commercially successful recording artist in history could generate back-end revenue that dwarfs the production cost. But the structural question does not disappear because the investment might work out. An executor who produces a film financed by the estate he manages, and who casts himself as a character in that film, has created a conflict of interest that the court will have to evaluate, regardless of the box office results.
But I never win. I don't take no orders.
Here is the turning point in this story that most coverage has missed entirely. The debate about executor fees, uninvested capital, and biopic conflicts is important, but the most consequential financial decision in the history of Michael Jackson's estate happened in 2016, years before Paris filed her legal challenge.
It just means family, and family to me is a feeling. It's love and great feeling.
It was the sale of MJ's stake in the Sony/ATV music publishing catalogue. In 1985, Michael Jackson paid $47.5 million to acquire ATV Music Publishing. That catalogue contained the rights to the entire Beatles library, every Lennon and McCartney composition. It also contained tens of thousands of other copyrights across every genre. In 1995, Jackson merged ATV with Sony's music publishing arm to create Sony/ATV, the largest music publisher in the world, with Jackson retaining 50% ownership. At the time of Jackson's death in 2009, his Sony/ATV stake was worth an estimated $1 billion. In 2016, the estate sold that stake to Sony for approximately $750 million. The streaming era had just begun. In 2016, Spotify had been available for only 7 years. The explosion of streaming-driven publishing royalties, the billions of dollars that flow annually to rights holders every time a song is played on any platform in any country, had barely started. The estate sold the most strategically valuable music publishing asset in existence at the very moment its income-generating trajectory was about to accelerate dramatically. From Reddit comments to financial analysts, the reaction to this decision has been consistent and sharp. The catalogue MJ spent his life protecting, the asset he famously told Paul McCartney he intended to outbid him for, the portfolio that made him the most powerful individual in music publishing. Was sold back to Sony during his estate's management. The beneficiaries received the proceeds of a $750 million transaction. But the ongoing royalty income from that catalogue, compounding through the streaming era and every platform expansion since, now flows to Sony rather than to MJ's children. Whether that decision served the beneficiaries optimally is the question that the estate's critics and Paris's legal team have been unable to let go of.
Our dad had us use like books as currency. So it's like, oh, if we're going to FAO Schwartz and you want 5 toys, well, you have to read 5 books and I will quiz you on it.
This is the pattern that connects Michael Jackson's estate to every other financial story this channel has covered. It is not the specific actors, it is the structural incentive. When you name a professional as your executor, a lawyer, an executive, a specialist with deep expertise and deep connections to the industry your estate operates in, you gain the benefit of their knowledge and their relationships. You also create a structure where the person controlling your assets has a financial incentive to keep controlling your assets. The longer the estate remains in active management, the more the executors are paid. The more income the estate generates, the more opportunities exist for discretionary decisions that benefit the management rather than the beneficiaries. This is not a conspiracy. It is a feature of probate law as written. And it is why 1 in 9 estates are legally disputed. For estates with active entertainment IP, professional executors, and ongoing commercial operations, the rate of conflict is significantly higher. Michael Jackson's case is extreme in scale. It is not unusual in structure. Marilyn Monroe's estate spent more than 40 years in active legal dispute after her death in 1962.
I would rather say that I have director approval, and that is true.
Howard Hughes's estate took years of litigation to resolve after his death in 1976. Prince's estate, following his death in 2016 without a will, generated years of family disputes and IRS conflicts that consumed a significant portion of the estate's value in professional fees. The MJ case follows a pattern that the legal system has demonstrated repeatedly it is not designed to prevent. The probate system was built for average estates. It assumes resolution in months. For a $2 billion entertainment estate with active commercial operations, international tax considerations, ongoing licensing disputes, and a multi-generational beneficiary pool, including a 95-year-old co-beneficiary in Katherine Jackson, the system has no mechanism to force completion. As long as the estate earns money, the executors have a rationale to remain.
That destroys the pigmentation of the skin is something that I cannot help, okay? But when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
And as long as they remain, they are paid. If you track how fame converts into financial power, how that power is structured through legal instruments, and what happens to the people who inherit it versus the people who manage it, subscribe to IconCapital. We run the actual numbers on stories like this, because the numbers are the story, and they are almost never told completely. Michael Jackson understood the music industry better than almost anyone who has ever worked in it. He fought Sony, he sued his label, he restructured his own publishing rights. He built the most valuable music catalogue in history from a $47 million investment. He left a 5-page will and 2 men he trusted to protect everything he spent his life building. 17 years later, those 2 men have been paid $148 million. His daughter has been paid $65 million. She is in a courtroom asking to see the full accounts. And a film financed by his estate, produced by his executor, opens in 2 weeks. Michael Jackson told us the industry was built on exploitation.
That's like you wanting an Oriental person to play you as a child. Does that make sense?
He spent his life trying to prove it could be beaten. The irony of his estate is that it may have proved his point about exploitation from the inside. The men who control the money are the men who were trusted with the money. That is the lesson, and it is the most expensive lesson in the history of popular music.